When Theodore Reynolds, an older country gentleman, walks into a posh big city bank, everyone treats him with contempt. As an employee summons security guards to forcibly lead him out, a shocking revelation leads her in dire straits. Theodore Reynolds was an elderly man who enjoyed country life. He made a lot of money through his life thanks to his land, farms, and dairy cattle, which opened many doors for him. But he never identified with the luxuries that money could buy him, such as expensive cars, gold watches, and mansions with more servants than family members. Moreover, the very urban and hectic cityscape was never one of his personal preferences. Theo, as he was known to those close to him, was the son of a farming couple who began life working on a small plot of land to harvest beans and corn, which were then sold at the local market. Misfortune struck the Reynolds ranch one night. A gang of bandits broke through the driveway fence and smashed the door of the family home. They were armed and demanded all of the money collected from the corn and bean harvest that season. Because the big city, where the banks were located, was a bit far away and the roads were not as good as they are today, it was common for rural families to keep large sums of money at home at the time. The robbers took advantage of this and targeted that family due to the size of their property. Theo's father attempted to stop the robbers from continuing their operation by punching one of them in the face. The man fell and was knocked out, and for a brief moment, it appeared that the family was about to turn the tables. But the thugs outnumbered them and were not taking any chances. When Theo's father attempted to pursue the second robber, a bullet struck him in the chest, killing him in front of everyone. Although Theo was only 7 years old, that tragic moment would live with him for the rest of his life. His mother, Maria, screamed and sobbed over her husband's body, refusing to be separated from him. The boy stood in a corner of the house, breathing heavily, and with his eyes narrowed, fearful of the present and the future. The bandits fled after the shooting. They probably didn't expect simple bean growers to fight back, and that shot would serve as a warning to nearby farms and ranches. Life had to return to normal after the burial. But Theo's mother was concerned that the men would return. The boy couldn't stand seeing his mother in such a nervous state, always worried about the safety of the place, the family, and not knowing if they would be able to survive on their own. So, despite his youth, he proposed to tend to the crops and land with the same zeal as his father, from sunrise to sunset. His mother had promised on her husband's grave that she would always fight for her son. Unfortunately, the difficulties were only beginning. Maria had to start from scratch. This year's harvest had been one of the poorest in the past 5 years, and there were many ranch activities she still didn't know how to do without her husband. She was turned down for a loan when she went into town to visit a bank. First and foremost, she was a woman, a widow, and her young child. Second, because Maria was just a poor peasant who allegedly couldn't run the farm without her husband. All these factors increased the risk that the bank would not receive the borrowed funds. And as the risk increases, so does the interest rate, further complicating the situation of that already vulnerable family. If she did not pay her debts, the bank would seize the ranch, leaving them with nothing. The bank manager was hesitant to approve the loan for the woman, but he would not stop her if she wanted to take the risks. Maria came to a dead end and had to return home empty-handed, her eyes red from crying. She was desperate and didn't know who to turn to. 2 days later, she learned that a restaurant owner in town rented farmers' land, such as the Reynolds families, to produce food that was then used in his business and with other partners in the area. This lease was not particularly expensive. Moreover, Maria and Theo would be severely exploited to make those lands pay. The woman had no choice but to lease the land in order to provide for her family's needs. It would be the first time they would work for someone else rather than for themselves, and they would see those acres bear fruit without the head of the family present. After 10 years, the land was still leased to the same restaurant owner. The businessman had done extremely well up to that point. He only had one establishment in the city when they signed the contract. He now had 3 in the nearest town and 2 more in surrounding villages. They weren't fancy, expensive restaurants, but they served lunch and dinner to the town's residents at very reasonable prices. All of these restaurants had a reputation for serving fresh, high-quality food, and nearly all of the vegetables were grown on the Reynolds property. At his mother's insistence, Theodore attended school on a regular basis and was expected to study at home when possible. Mary stated that this was what his father would want because he was unable to study, and his mother did everything she could to ensure that her late husband's wishes were fulfilled. But at the age of 17, Theo had decided to stop studying and devote himself entirely to the ranch. His plan was to reclaim control of the land and begin producing for the benefit of the family first, depriving the town businessmen of priority. And as soon as he graduated from high school that year, he put on his best pants, his boots with spurs, and his father's hat, and rode into town. When Theo announced that the lease on the land would not be renewed, the owner of the restaurants was enraged. The businessman was wary of this young cowboy. He was only a child. He wanted to expand the family business just because he had a diploma? The man insisted that he had always treated the Reynolds fairly and that they had gotten a good deal. His restaurants were doing well, the vegetables they produced were praised, and the family was always paid on time. Theo agreed that he was grateful for the 10 years of collaboration and that they could continue to provide food for him if he wanted, but his family would take precedence. It was time for the Reynolds Ranch to charge a more reasonable price for their produce, and Theo was willing to roll up his sleeves even further to make his plan work. When the manager saw how determined Theo was, he relented and the contract was not renewed. The land would be fully owned and cared for by the boy and his mother by the end of the month. He had taken the first step towards his family's emancipation and felt victorious, but the young man had no idea what he had gotten himself into. 2 nights later, the restaurant owner dispatched a group of men to the Reynolds Ranch. The plan was simple: steal whatever money the family had stored in the house so that they would have no choice but to lease the land again. The group arrived late at night, jumping over the entrance fence and making their way to the main house without waking the animals. They found no one when they entered the house, so they kept searching the rooms for a safe, a suitcase, or a bag in which Maria and Theo could keep the money. Theo had learned that the businessman was not always fair, and he suspected that he might want to retaliate against him and his mother for not renewing the contract. So he took all the savings out of the house and hid them somewhere far away from the property. Furthermore, he and his mother both stayed away and slept on a neighboring farm. The thieves who ransacked the house found nothing valuable and no trace of the Reynolds savings. They returned to the restaurant owner empty-handed. When the growing season began, Theo struck a deal with the local farms, greatly expanding his production area. Weather conditions were favorable throughout the year, and the crop yields exceeded expectations. Theo and Maria earned 3 times the amount previously paid by the restaurant's owner at the time. The young man had big plans, so he went into town to ask the bank for a loan. His plans would be advanced if he could obtain the investment funds. However, the bank once again denied the loan. This time, the manager believed that Theo was too young to keep the ranch and expansion plans running for the next 5 years. "Boy, come back when the ranch has the liquidity to afford our interest rates," he was told. Theo became enraged and vowed that one day he would establish his own bank and then help and invest in other small farmers like himself. The manager laughed and wished the young man luck. Theo remained focused on his work. The Reynolds repeated the process that had worked so well in the previous seasons, and they always found good partners in the region's farms and buyers in the surrounding cities. They gradually expanded their plantations and acquired more land. In the midst of all this, Theo married a beautiful woman, the daughter of a farmer who lived near the state border. They were already good dairy cattle farmers 15 years later. Maria was now an elderly woman who was proud of everything they had accomplished and how they now supported not only themselves but also the many families of their employees. Theo saw development coming to the farm, but he was opposed to all the modern conveniences they invented. He enjoyed horseback riding and did not own a car. One day he realized it was time to relocate. After all, it would be easier to transport everyone, including his mother, who had worked so hard her entire life and deserved more comfort and less disruption. So he gathered the entire family and took the bus to the state capital. They took a cab from there to a new and used car dealership. He found a pickup truck that appeared to be sturdy enough for his needs. He paid for the car all at once with a suitcase of cash, the kind you only see in movies. When the paperwork was completed and the salesman said he could drive his new car home, Theo realized he didn't know how to drive. Now, how do I get home? After striking a good deal with the farmer, the salesman stated that he would be responsible for the group. The salesman served as a driver and guide for Maria, Theo, and his wife during their 3-day stay at the capital. Feeling confident in the man, Theo decided to inquire about what kinds of big city businesses were good investments for a man like him looking to diversify his business even further. The salesman, unaware of the size of Theo's business, told him that only bankers made real money in that city. Theo did not go to the bank that day, but these thoughts lingered in his mind for some time. In the weeks that followed, he summoned his accountants and lawyers to conduct a massive negotiation. Everyone was taken aback by Theo's plans. Even his neighbors thought he wasn't serious, or that he had gone insane. "Some things are not for people like us," a farmer he had known for a long time said. But months later, the negotiation was successful, and he needed to go to the local bank. He left the ranch dressed in the same outfit he always wore when riding horses on his properties. He was perplexed as he entered the bank through the main customer entrance. Nobody else seemed to be like him. Some of the customers waiting to be served were clearly what Theo knew as city playboys. Other women were dressed as if they were going to a party. There were also people in suits, people with dyed hair, and men with tattoos up to their necks. Theo didn't mind any of this, but he felt he stood out from the crowd. He went to a wing with the word management written on it as soon as he walked in. People were talking about his boots and hat. He overheard another playboy betting with a friend that the man had arrived on horseback because he had just entered and the smell of the animal filled the waiting room. 5 minutes after his arrival, an employee of the institution asked Theo to present his password in a pedantic and dismissive tone. The rural producer was curious what he was talking about. After all, he had never seen this employee ask for anyone else's password in that room. In response, he was told that he couldn't stay without a password because the bank had rules. You had to take a ticket to be served and wait your turn. And if he wanted to talk to the management, he had to be a very important account holder at the bank. The man then accepted the ticket and returned to the same spot to wait his turn. Theo informed the clerk that what he had to do there would undoubtedly be of interest to the institution's management. However, one of the VIP attendants noticed that many people were uncomfortable with the presence of the old cowboy and requested that the situation be handled by the security guards. Then 2 thugs confronted Theo and demanded that he show proof that he was a bank customer. Theo refused to show any documents because, like any other citizen, he was simply waiting his turn to be served. The thugs, however, grabbed him and began dragging the farmer by the arm. Theo objected to the security guard's behavior and demanded an explanation. One of the bank's executives decided to step in to find out what was going on. When he saw Theo being dragged away, his heart stopped for a moment. When he regained his voice, he told the thugs to let the gentleman go. "What are you doing? Don't you realize this is Theodore Reynolds?" the manager yelled. With wide eyes, the security guards excused themselves and began to straighten Theo's clothes and posture. "This man owns the bank. The purchase was made 3 weeks ago. Have you lost your mind? Please accept my apologies, Mr. Reynolds. I didn't know you were here because I wasn't told." Neither the security guards nor the customers who witnessed the scene believed the farmer was a banker. Theo used the occasion to warn everyone that they should get used to it because, starting that day, the bank would do business with the region's small farmers and ranchers, offering them special credit lines and investment opportunities. Theo also stated that he did not like being treated differently by the VIP customer attendant, which is why she would be reassigned to exclusive service for rural farmers. The woman stated that she would rather leave the company than deal with those people. After all, she hadn't gone to college for that. But the manager reminded her that she had a large active loan with that bank, and that being out of work now could be disastrous for her. The clerk frothed with rage, but at the end of the day, began the exclusive service of farmers and ranchers from the region the following week, all of them wearing boots and hats and bringing the smell of the countryside into her office. Theodore Reynolds, on the other hand, carried on with his simple life on the ranch. The bank was used to finance projects for several people who, like him, needed an outstretched hand but couldn't find it. Every time he heard of a farmer or small producer who was bettering his life thanks to the help provided by the bank, he felt his mission had been accomplished. On these occasions, he would remove his hat and raise it to the sky. He hoped his father was watching all this from a safe distance and waving back. If you enjoyed this story, please leave a like, and this other video appearing on the screen will most likely move you as well. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next video.